Spring break.
Good. That's awesome. So, Josh, there's an old fire truck. It looks like it's on the, you know, Haber, that road on Haber where they park a bunch of trucks at Iowa State. It's like an old Iowa State fire truck. So I was telling Brent, well, can't we get that to be in the election? It's like, well, that's probably Iowa State. So then the next thing, he sends me a text. That he found an old fire truck in 1957. $7,500. I'm like, can we buy it to put it in the home computer?
I'm looking for one.
Well, you should ask me. $7,500. I mean, I would guess.
You can get them for cheap.
Well, it's, I mean, we're,
It's like buying old school, let's try to get rid of them.
Yeah. Scrap out. You get nice and scrap out.
but it had like,
Courtney, are you able to hear us?
it had some.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
But anyway, I was like, oh man, look at that. I was asking people like, hey, you're going to use this venture to buy fire trucks.
Actively looking.
Well,
I need one that works though.
well, it said it
Spraying water,
works.
not beer.
It did say it has a siren that works. I was thinking, there's the kids in it driving around. I think that's why.
Yeah, you need to upgrade probably after I.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna need to upgrade your shed because I need a place to put it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I got a corn hat today. It's like corn on the top because it's vegetables. It's the whole
Yeah,
thing is vegetables. Let us beat you or something, or beat us, don't let us beat, I don't know. It's in lettuce and vegetables. And then we bought little stress vegetables to throw out to the. Super excited about it. Right. And then I hope, well, I don't know, we were gonna do a poster contest, but I don't
Mr.
know.
President,
It's
I
time
have
for-
Alex as an attendee. He's not a participant, he's using the wrong link.
I'm gonna text him.
Maybe send him another link. I'll call him right now. Hey, perfect. You resend that to him? Yep, we're gonna send it to you right now. Thanks, Alex. Send both his personal and his work, just so we, I don't know which one he's on right now.
Yeah, that'd be good. I love homeschool. And then this Friday is the Iowa State Game. Super excited. It is a big deal. Yeah. I don't know, I gotta find that out, because I've got friends that are coming, because they know people in Iowa State. But, both.
Play both?
Great. Good job. Phew, thank you for knowing that. Yeah, I have friends that have kids in the Iowa State game, so they're coming to, you know, similar worlds are colliding. They're coming to the Tiger game to see their grandkid.
He's joined. Alex, can you hear us?
Sir,
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Alex. All right, 6:05, I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Second,
seconded.
further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, agenda passed. Public forum. Gail, do we have anyone here for public forum? Everything in email? All right. Moving on to oral reports and announcements and celebrations.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. As always, we have lots of celebrations and announcements wanted to talk about. The first one, they're all different topics tonight. So the first one I wanted to talk about is just, I hope everyone's noticing, we're putting out more information on our Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. So if you do not follow or haven't followed Gilbert School District, please do so. I also have Dr. T is my handle, is that the right word for Twitter? And so a lot of good information coming out there. Just a couple of facts. Troy Banning is our communications director that I wanted to share. So over the month, our Facebook engagement numbers have increased by 106%. In the different posts that are going out. It's all about different celebrations that are happening in the school district. And we are up 177% in our page likes. So people are looking at it, they're liking, they're interacting with it. Also with Twitter, we have lots of impressions, over 40,000 impressions on Twitter with the different pieces that are coming out there. The next piece I want to thank and congratulate Troy Banning on is he put out our media guide called Game On. If people haven't logged on to see that, I would recommend that they do that. It is only online at this time. We're hoping in the future we can print it, but that's very, very expensive. And so that particular guide at the time of this, which was about a week ago, we had over 1,600 views on the guide and over 35,000 individual page views within the guide. So we're getting lots of information out to people. We'll continue to do that. Part of telling our story, we've talked to all of our schools, is sharing that information so that Mr. Banning can tell our story in all the different ways to get that out there. So he's also writing articles, so I hope people are taking the time to read those really impactful articles as well. So that's a celebration. The second one I wanted to mention is homecoming is coming up next week. So we hope everyone is check your school information on dress up days and what's happening, and our parade is coming up. And so be watching for that next week. This Friday, the Iowa State Band will be joining the Gilbert Marching Band at the football game on Friday night, both for pregame and for halftime. So we hope everyone comes. That'll be outstanding. And we have a lot of Gilbert grads that are there as Iowa State band members and siblings. And so it's going to be a wonderful time. So please, in between an awesome football game. So keep an eye on that. The other thing that, two other things that are mentioned in our facilities report tonight is if you recall last year, we did, we worked with De Novo to set priorities on things that needed to be done. And the facilities and grounds, Brent and Dan have been leading that, and we've looked at that along with Gail of when can certain projects happen, and they've been happening. One of them, the pictures are in your packet, are the differences in the intermediate building on just the power washing. You wouldn't believe, I couldn't believe what a difference it made, and it really just brightened up the intermediate school on the outside. And that was just one project that we're really happy that has been brought forward. And then the second big project we've talked about many, many times, even before I arrived, is that sidewalk. If you've driven by the sidewalk over by the high school, it looks like it's wrapping up. And so we've widened the sidewalk. Thank you to the board for approving that project and to getting that done. And Brent Randolph to work through getting the company involved. And so that looks like that's about finished. So we're all great celebrations. So I think that is my portion of it. And then two other quick announcement celebrations. The state of Iowa has a safety grant that we are
participating in, and Vic Vanderpool is here to talk to us a little bit about the safety grant.
Funds through the state of Iowa became available to all districts in the state if they apply for the funding. Basically what the funding is every building is eligible for up to $50,000 in funding for safety related issues to make improvements at your building. The district had to fill out an interest survey online through the state reporting to show interest in applying for this. We've done that. The next portion of that is vulnerability assessment. So there's a third party that the state uses that will come and do a vulnerability assessment of all 4 buildings. So they'll do 2 buildings one day and 2 buildings another day. It's about 2 hours per building. They'll go through and then they'll come up with a report that we have to submit as part of that funding to get that funding source. There's a couple other things we have to do along the way. With that vulnerability report, then if we are issued the money based on our vulnerability report, then it's $50,000 per building. But the caveat is you have to use it based on what you found out in your vulnerability report. Now you could find out that one building only has $10,000 or $15,000 worth of vulnerability issues. You can address that, and that money can be transferred to a different project, a different building that has higher needs. And so we really won't know much more than that until we have the vulnerability assessment done. That's coming up in, I think it was in February. So there'll be the building principals involved, our grounds and maintenance will be there as well. And then we'll kind of know from there. But, and then there's a period of time within a couple of years that we have to spend it. The one thing that's a little nerve wracking is that, we have to spend our funds. So, and then we get reimbursed. And so, you're talking $200,000 of our own funds toward different things that come up in the vulnerability report.
Who does the assessment?
It's a third-party vendor that the state of Iowa has approved as one of the only vendors.
And they're gonna do every school in the state?
Well, there's 2 options. You can have your local law enforcement do it also, along with your emergency management response coordinator for the county.
Yeah.
They can come and do it. There's a few more hoops to jump if they do it, but you can do it that way, or you can use this third party. You have a full 2 years to, you have a year to get the assessment done, and then you have another full year to get the improvements done. And so, as soon as we got approved that we were interested, we set up an appointment right away. And so we're hoping to have that vulnerability report, by the end of February. We'll know, around spring break-ish, kind of what that looks like, and then what the next steps are for there's a whole bunch of more hoops to jump because it's federal money and things like that, Homeland Security, stuff like that. So
How does that work? Let's just say we do other rehabs in the buildings and all that. Can we tie some of that funding in, some of that, or we're gonna do things beyond just the safety of the buildings. We're gonna add a gymnasium or a classroom, whatever. I'm just making stuff up now. How does that work to tie all that together? Or
That
it
money
has to be
can-
separate?
that money can only be used for things that are identified in the vulnerability
You
assessment.
have the same part of the project, but then pull those funds away and pay for it. Okay.
It could be, depending on what comes up with our, master planning thing, we'd have to be careful. Like off the top of my head, fencing around the elementary school. If we identify that in the master planning study and say we want to build a fence around the playground, that can be viewed as supplanting. If then we apply for a grant, if we've already budgeted for it, so it'd be something.
Yeah.
Door.
You gotta really be smart about it, because you can't you can't be reimbursed for things you've already done.
Yeah.
There's very specific things, but fencing, ballistic film for windows, like there's all kinds of things listed, radios, intercom systems, all kinds of different things that could be, they kind of give you a general list of categories, 6 main categories, things fall inside of it. 50,000 seems like quite a bit, but when you start talking projects,
Yeah.
it's gonna go pretty quickly, so.
And then,
What's that?
Radios.
Yeah,
did you want to talk about the radios, or did you already mention that? The radios that everyone's getting?
go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. So also part of this is that every building would get an updated more high-tech safety radio. We actually received one in every building last year from Story County from a grant they did. So this would give us a second one. You had to go in and basically say you were interested or apply for it. And so those will be coming as well as part of this safety piece. While we are very grateful that we're having some funding come to us, as Vic mentioned, $50,000 per building sounds like a lot, but it goes pretty quick. If you're thinking about, just an updated phone system can be as much as $100,000 for the district. That 50,000 doesn't go far enough probably for just updated things. But we're grateful for what we have, and we'll go through the hoops we need to make sure we're up to date on our safety measures. So.
Second part of the safety reports for today is we're getting very close to implementing Raptor, which we approved last spring. That's our visitor and volunteer management system in each building. We've set an October target date to have it fully implemented and running. Jason has all the hardware set up in all the buildings. We're working through a parent letter that will be going out and the frequently asked questions document that will follow with it to give parents and our community members an idea of what's going on. And then it's kind of broken down into two areas. Visitors, people that are coming for short periods of time, and people that are volunteering, like all day things. They go through kind of two different background checks. So a visitor could just be a contractor that's coming to your building to do some duct work. They will be ran through the National Sex Offender Registry to make sure they're safe to be around kids. Volunteer could be you as a parent coming in and being chaperone all day. We've ran background checks on parents for volunteers as long as I can remember. So it's nothing new. It's just we're going to be doing it online now. So we will be able to send out a link to parents. They can fill out the background check form online and just submit it online. So it's super easy, super convenient. It's good for the entire school year. We'll be meeting with the secretaries to train our secretaries here soon. And that's pretty much it. So we got a meeting with them tomorrow morning to kind of hash out some last few minute details, because I know there's going to be lots of questions and things that maybe we haven't thought of, but
This is based on a driver's license, is that right?
yeah, or government issued, I could be used as government issued
So it doesn't
ID.
have to, you don't have to have a driver's license.
No, it could be a government issued ID, or you can have information manually put in by coming up to the counter. If you, for some reason, didn't bring your license, you could tell me your name, your birth date. We can enter that information running through the system that way as well.
Because I was looking into this a little bit. Yeah, I mean, what's the vetting process if you don't know me and I said, my name is this and this is my birthday? Is there?
Yeah, that's a good question, because, I can use your information, submit it, and if I don't know you, that is a very good question.
I like the system. I think it's a good system.
Yeah.
There's just things.
We were actually just discussing this just a few minutes before you walked in, that is a question that needs to be answered, because we wouldn't want somebody that knows that they're going to get, dinged, giving them false information and then we're clearing it through. So that'll be a question I'll answer. I can get back to you directly, Jeff.
But also with that is that if someone doesn't have, maybe they don't have a picture ID, or they don't want to put it into the system, it's still, we're working through, the principal, would come up and talk to them. And then maybe we wouldn't just say, oh yeah, have a good time. Then we might be a little more like, let's walk you down to the classroom, have you be in the classroom with the teacher, so that's not something that's that common that we haven't done in the past, when we do different volunteers. So this way, or visitors. And so this way, it's very clear to be volunteer or visitor. We have that in place, but also if there's someone that's uncomfortable with that, then we just would not just give them free rein of the school. We would monitor them a little more closely.
The nice part is it prints out a nice big bright badge that they put on their shirt. Staff members know that they're visitors. Students will know that. If a staff member sees an adult in the building that shouldn't be there and they don't have a badge on, they need to, contact their administrator and let them know that there's someone in the building that didn't go through the system. So I think ultimately it's gonna be a good thing for keeping the kids safe.
And we do, I know that we were talking to Ballard. Ballard has had it in place, I think, for 6 years, 6 or 7 years. So many of our neighboring districts are utilizing it. So and have had
Ames
good success.
utilizes it. There's
Ames
other
uses
districts that,
Yeah.
quite a few, actually, a lot of districts
So
utilize
it's
it.
good. So.
You said game nights, that's gonna change. Contractors come go.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that. Yeah, because contractors, when they're there for the day, they'll have to check into the building. So
And probably they're used to that in other situations they've been in, so. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Van? Thank you for leading
Thanks,
that.
Nick.
Yeah, we'll keep you
Appreciate it.
informed as we go, and Jason and Troy have done a lot of work to help with the process, so thank them as well.
That's great. And then the last piece, I just want to mention again that we've had such a wonderful start to the school year. Our teachers and staff have been working so hard, and it's really been wonderful to just see everybody back and enjoying the beautiful weather and the great things that are happening. So right now, we're just going to share our first day video that was put out the first week of school, kind of what it looked like on the first day. Thank you, Jason.
It's awesome to see all of the kiddos today. Welcome back, Gilbert.
Excited to have you back here. It's gonna be a great school year. Go Tigers!
Welcome back, Gilbert. It's great to see you.
You did a great year, Gilbert.
Every
Students,
Every.
day.
And that concludes my remarks on that.
Very, very much, Christine.
Of course.
Comments at all, Josh?
I like the outreach has been a noticeable increase. I like it.
Keep it up.
Admin reports, district goals.
Okay, if you recall, last year we had our 3 goals. We worked over the summer, as well as just in the last month with the principals to take a look at our goals and to say, how are we doing? Do we want to continue them? How do we move them forward? So we just made a few tweaks. We have an academic goal is our first goal, similar to what we had last year, but we refined it somewhat. Under goal 2, we talked about adding, what we added there is, there wasn't anything mentioned about wellness and leadership. So we went ahead and added those components when we think about, so we have an academic goal as goal 1. Goal 2 is our goal that's talking about developing our culture and the whole child related to academics, wellness, and leadership, and how we're going to go about that. Those are our action steps under there. You'll see the action steps are not all new. Some of them are similar to what we had last year. So it's some tweaking and somewhat of a continuation to move us forward. And then the final goal is really about how are we all coming together as a district. This kind of goes back to my listening tour. I heard that many times, that as we continue to grow, how do we keep this close and get to know each other? So with this one, we talked about supporting each other, creating that community while putting students first, and then having opportunities for us to celebrate one another throughout the district. So we wanted to just bring those to you this evening and make sure that you were aware. We'll be putting out new graphics related to it because there is a difference, but these will be our goals for 22-23, and we'll be continuing to work on them and look at the action steps to make sure that we move along with each of them.
I don't have to do it all. It's great. Christine, I don't have any questions at all.
Okay.
Next item was Raptor update, which Vicky already did. He gave us the Raptor update, so we can move right along to IASB annual convention is November 16th through the 18th. We need to have registration in by November 9th. Is that correct, Gail?
Yes, that's the last day to register, so I probably won't register unless you let me know. And then I will register whoever wants to attend.
Yep, I think maybe next board meeting we'll kind of get it finalized for who's here, but.
I'll have it on next meeting.
You went last year, gosh, yeah, it's a good event, so. Moving right along, facilities report. Do we have CMBA online here?
We are here tonight.
Awesome, welcome, Courtney.
Thank you. Thanks for letting us zoom in tonight. We provided the draft of the first kind of discovery piece of the master planning process for you guys to review in your packets. And we have just kind of a high level presentation that Andrew can share with you, and we'll go through it very succinctly. And if you guys have any questions for us, and kind of then our next steps jumping into the next piece.
Perfect. Yeah, Jason's getting it moved over right now, so give us a couple seconds here. We'll let you know when it's all hooked up.
Sounds great.
All right, I think we're ready. We got it up on the screen.
Okay, are you seeing it? Full screen?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, perfect. So as Courtney said, we're going to try to be as succinct as possible. We worked through this with Dr. Trujillo and Josh and Tyler, and as they know, if you dive too deep into it, you can spend an hour very quickly getting sucked into some of this data. So we're going to talk through mainly how to go through the book and what some of the graphs mean. And then if you have any questions later on towards the end, we can dive a little bit deeper, but we want to make sure that we understand the flow of it sort of so that you can know where to look essentially if you need to look for a specific individualized piece. But there's 7 different sections within the book. So it starts out with assessment methods and an overall district view. And so there you're going to find if we use metrics or we use rules of thumb, or you're wondering how exactly it is we arrived at one of our final pieces of data, All of that is going to be explained in the first 1 or 2 sections. And then it goes into the 4 different schools. So you have a section for primary elementary school, intermediate, middle, and high school. And each of those have their own subsection for conditions, capacity, and then the learning environments. And then to wrap it all up, we have an executive summary that puts them all into perspective, and you can sort of see how each school compares to the other. So I said the subsections, each subsection has their own like buzzwords or key metrics that we're looking for. So 3 sections, and then there's 8 words at the end that we put a measurement on. So in the end, there is a graphic that has 24 total measurements, and you can see how they fill up or stack up, and you can sort of see visually where there's room for improvement or where there's room that, or where you may be doing well. So I'll show an example of the primary elementary school. You'll see that this is a chart that is not as filled out. So there you can see each bar is ranked 1 to 10, and then on the aggregate, so like the red is capacity. You can see that there are significant capacity concerns at the elementary school, and later you'll find out that each school has its own individual capacity concerns. But the elementary schools are a little bit different because they are a little bit lacking in conditions and environments, whereas the middle school and high school are doing well in those categories. Those older facilities, there's just some gaps when you're converting from a high school into an elementary school, or when learning environments change, it's hard to keep up with that. So you'll find some of those within, but you will see conditionally like thermal comfort, air quality, and safety were metrics that were invested in the 2018 master planning process. And so you're scoring really well in some of those categories, but there were like interior appearance items where they were listed in the 2018 master plan, but maybe as a secondary or tertiary priority. And so some of those may be lacking. But the executive summary, as I mentioned, places all 4 facilities in relation to each other. So you'll see those 2 primary and intermediate elementaries. They are a little bit emptier than the middle school and high school. You want lots of color in this graphic. If you have lots of color, that means you're doing exceptionally well. And the middle school and high school built more recently, they're doing exceptionally well in some of the conditional and some of the environment metrics. What you will notice is that capacity, there's still room for improvement in both of these schools. And so that's what we think is really going to drive our steps forward in the master planning process, is making sure that capacity is dealt with in each facility. Because if we focus too much attention on any one category of any one facility, we might lose some potential to improve other facilities. So I'm going to take a look at one chart that we think is especially telling. What you're looking at is average class size per 8th grade classroom right now. So each grade has this broken down into what the enrollment projections are saying per classroom. So that red dashed line is what our desired capacity size is. We heard a lot in especially the community report that community values the small class size, the more intimate classrooms where teachers can take the chance to really get to know all their students and not necessarily lose any sort of control over the classroom or get too hectic with too many students. And so with current projections on the left side of the screen, that's your historical class size in 8th grade. The purple is with 5 sections, which is what you have right now. The blue is what if you would have had 6 sections at the time or in the future. And then the green is what if we move towards 7 sections. So you'll see right now, the purple in 8th grade, you've had certain years where you're above that 25 student capacity. And in the future, that projection is only going to get more accentuated. That area is, we think that is the most likely area that it's going to fall in. Obviously, there's fluctuations year to year, but that average keeps on growing higher. So even some of the smaller classes 5-10 years in the future are still looking at that over the 25 limit threshold. So if you take one step down and look at the blue area, that's if we had another section of core curriculum for those 8th graders, then what would the average class size be? And you'll see that a lot more of those probabilities of students will be in that blue area. And then you move on, what's one step more, 7 sections? That you're probably good for the next 10 years. You probably won't reach that threshold. And so we played this little experiment with each separate facility, and we saw, is it time to look, 10 years in the future, is it time to look at 7 sections? Are we going to be good with 6 sections? We're still trying to nail down these capacity numbers, definitely. So this is where we're at right now, but eventually, when we're all totally done, this is going to be a very telling chart on how many students you want per classroom and what we need to do to get there. When you couple this with a chart like this, what you're seeing is classroom size for middle schoolers. So in the very beginning, we say, if you were to design a new school right now, what would your classroom size want to be? So for the 25 student threshold that you have established, we say about 900 square feet is what we would decide for a general classroom. So you'll see most of these classrooms are within 5%. So the classroom size is not really the issue at the middle school. But when you start to pack 28, 30 students into those adequately sized classrooms, that's when teachers start to feel very cramped. They start to feel like they can't necessarily get to every student. There's not enough time in the day. So it's not necessarily a classroom size or an overall school size. It is how many classrooms you have available for those students. So those are 2 charts that you'll find for each facility. The high school is a little bit unique. And so this chart is only in the high school, but we're looking at preparation periods per day. It's unique because high schools, sometimes you have freshmen taking classes with juniors, and it's not necessarily students per section. So it's a little bit more nuanced where we're looking at how occupied rooms are. And so the bright red classrooms, they have 0 preparation periods per day. And on the other side of the spectrum is 4+. Those are classrooms that may not be as utilized throughout the day. And so the moral of the story with this is that every classroom is occupied by a teacher. So if there is a point in the future where you're adding new classes or adding new faculty members, you're either going to need more classrooms or you're going to need to figure out how to share these classrooms to make it work. And so you'll see in these charts, most classrooms have at least 2 preparation periods per day. So that means if teachers are able to share those classrooms, if you can get 3 teachers to agree to share their classrooms, that means that you just gained 6 periods of the day that can be taught. The caveat is that those teachers now need a separate prep space, and the teachers lounge that they have right now just really isn't working as like a preparation area. So what you make up for and save square footage that you don't have to construct classrooms, you now have to think of where you can have a space for those teachers to prep outside of their classrooms. So that's a little bit different one, but it is unique to the high school, and it sort of addresses that high school capacity need because we know that they do exist there. So to recap it, we have a concrete understanding of those 24 metrics, but overall those 3, capacity, condition, and environment, that are really going to drive discussions going forward. And we know that each of those have to be addressed. We can't really focus on one school. So to end it, as part of the executive summary, we have 3 sort of directions to go with the master planning process to make sure that we're addressing everything that we need. So the first recommendation or metric to success that we advise is to determine the standard section size for each grade. So we know that this next project that we do is probably going to be the best chance at a large project for the next 10-ish years, maybe 20 years. So we want to plan into the future. And in that time period, there are some classes where 7 sections is going to be a reality. So we want to make sure we're thinking far enough in the future to understand that capacity need. And that's another reason why we really want to make sure that any enrollment projection is very accurate, because if we're planning 20 years in the or 10 years in the future, we want to really know what grade section classes we're looking at. The other thing is planning for flexibility. So like I said, there's fluctuation in grade levels. So sometimes you may have an exceptionally large kindergarten class, whereas the first grade class above it is a little bit smaller. And so how can we make classrooms that aren't necessarily specific to a grade level, but can sort of flex around? One thing you'll notice in the report is that there aren't flex classrooms per se right now. And it's hurt some of the elementary school programs. There have been some programs in the past, like an elementary maker lab, which teachers used a lot, but just the fact that there needed to be more standard classrooms, they took over some of that auxiliary functioning classrooms. So we want to make sure that those are planned in so that they can have those auxiliary classrooms without being phased out if there are capacity needs in the future. And then maximizing efficiency. We know if we are, that money that we're planning for this project can get used up very quickly. And so we want to be extremely efficient with how we're using it. And we want to make sure that we're not wasting any existing resources. We want to make sure that anything new is benefiting the most amount of students the most positively. So being extremely efficient, make sure we're planning for flexibility, and making sure that each class size is well thought out in the future are 3 considerations that we say are going to drive the master planning process. And then this is sort of our idea. We've already started some of this with some of the building admin. We've looked at some of the capacity and grade groupings, and we looked at potential options to address each of those issues that we look at in the book. And we're starting to understand this may not be as big of an issue. We have to address this first. And so we're working through that with some of the principals, and we talked through some of those options. And then after that, we said, this isn't really working for what the future of Gilbert's trying to be. So we can shrink down, narrow our focus a little bit. And then we have a couple more meetings for financial capacity, looking at project costs, being extremely efficient, trying to maximize our bang for the buck. We'll eventually look at phasing construction schedule, how that's going to affect student learning. And then eventually what we're working towards at the end of October towards early November, that's putting it all together, establishing a best path forward so that we can have some sort of recommendation for the school board. So that's as quick as I can possibly get through it. And the more you dive into this book, I'm not sure how much time you guys have had to actually look into this book, but it's pretty thick, a lot of pictures, so it might not be as daunting as it looks at first glance. But if there are any questions or you have any inquiries as to why this may rank what it does, feel free to reach out at any time or talk a little bit more about it.
You mentioned you're digging more into enrollment numbers. So you said you're starting to do some research on that, working with IFSIS or whoever to get those numbers?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So right now, what you're seeing is ISFIS last year projection, as well as CMBA has their own projection. And so we try to use those 2 together to give a range that it's likely going to fall into. So we have a couple different data points. We really want, the more data, the better, trying to find like a law of average. So we're going to work with ISFIS and try to get an extreme, like as down pat measurement as possible. And then we'll do all those graphs over again so we can see where we line up. So you can sort of understand where they're starting to head, but there is a few tweaks that probably need to be made eventually.
What's next step from a board level standpoint? We mentioned about doing a work session, is that correct?
Yes, there's a couple things. One, I do think we need a board work session so that we can go through the book more intensely and with everyone in the room. I think we need to have a discussion about, there are companies out there that can do enrollment projections. I talked to a couple neighboring districts that have used them. If that's something we want to consider, we need more information around that, about what does that cost and what does it bring to the table, and is it do we need that when we already have these other options? But that's something we can discuss at a work session, work study, and then bring that back to the board to make sure. But I think that's our next steps. And then I really want to thank Andrew and Courtney and Joe and the team, because every time they meet with us and they hear our feedback, I see it reflected in the next presentation. And I think it's just getting more and more refined every single time. So I'm grateful to them for that.
Josh, I know you're active on the committee here, so what's your thought? I know we're all happy with the process so far, kind of next steps going forward.
Yeah. Enrollment is the thing, and I think we're, based on the numbers that we've been using, we're low, which I think we all kind of expected. So I like the idea of at least considering an expert in enrollment and seeing what they're thinking. Because I mean, these projections in the class size is about 10 years. I mean, that's no time.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about this in a couple of years.
Right, right. Well, I did reach out to an organization, and that's what they do is school enrollment projections. And so I'm sure there's more than one available, but I just, the name came to us from another district that they had utilized them and been really happy. And like I said, I don't know what the cost is. That's going to come. We'll find out before we make that decision, before we all decide how you want to do that. But I think I'm really happy to hear, as the work we've been doing with CMBA, that it starts with, we really have to decide what are those standards related to class size. So we know that it's important to this community, as it should be, and I'm thrilled about, that we keep those class sizes at a small, number. That's what makes Gilbert the amazing place that it is. And so we want to also discuss what is our capacity if we were to build a building or add on to a building or renovate a building. So the entire building also fits with what we want as a district. The other thing I'll mention, Andrew mentioned it, but I'd like to just, say, he just mentioned it as an option. I thought he presented it beautifully about the high school. There have been times in the past where teachers had to share a classroom and have a share center. And I will tell you, teachers do not love that option. So I just want to say, high school teachers, I know you don't love that option. So we're not saying that's something that's going to happen. It's just he's presenting the information to us. It would be something that we would have huge discussions over. But in a sense, it doesn't solve your problem, because yes, you're sharing the space. But as Andrew mentioned in his presentation, you still have to have like a teacher share center, which that could just be a classroom. So it's a harder one. And the model looks different in high school because you have labs and you have projects, and so it looks different. But I just wanted to mention that. But I did think that Andrew did a nice job of sharing all the options. We have to think about those pieces too, that we want our teachers to be happy in their environments, so they feel like they have what they need to do their very best. So those are my thoughts. And I don't know if we can send out a date to pick as we move forward. Once I'm able to do that with everyone and pick something, in the future. I know the principals would like to be involved as well. They really enjoyed the time they spent on it, to be in that, to participate in that. So
yeah, and that's the one comment I have, is working, going to some of the meetings with the principals, lean on them, because they, just from what I've seen, they really understand, and they're a good vessel to make these decisions through.
absolutely. So we'll involve them as well.
Yeah, well, I said maybe work with Andrew and Courtney and find some dates and do a work session and get on the calendar.
We'll do that.
We need to spend some time on this, and I don't necessarily know if a meeting like this is the time to do it. So it's going to be a few hours. So awesome.
Yeah, and that'll give you guys more time to look deeper into that book and come prepared with a few questions, so that we can really dive into what is truly important. Because like I said, some of that's data in the book, it doesn't really mean that much. There are definitely some issues that are more important. So we can dive way deeper into that if we do a work session.
Good. Well, thank you very much. That was great information. I go through this over the weekend. I thought it was awesome, and looking forward to having some more discussions on it as well.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, moving along. We're gonna go into some old business. Consider approve a handbook, photo language updates.
Yes, if you recall, the last meeting, it was brought to our attention that the handbook photo language was not consistent throughout our building, so our principals did a great job working together. They put this together and put it into the handbook it is something that is the same in each handbook, so it's clear to families. And it's really important, even more so now as we are putting out more social media content, that people understand how we're utilizing that. So I wanted you to be sure you had that information and that you approve that if you agree tonight.
Any other questions for Christine on it? We have a motion to approve.
Motion.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Review or approve the return to learn plan for 2022-23.
Okay, so in front of you, you have the return to learn plan. Why are we talking about this? Why has this come back?
Blast from the past.
It is a blast from the past. It is stated from the Department of Education that this plan should be updated. If we made any changes, it needed to come back to the board. And so because there's significant changes related to what it looks like, we brought it back to the board to make sure that we are following what we're asked to do. So basically what it talks about is that as far as learning, of course, we're all in person. We do have online learning available. It's not related to the COVID. It's related to if there's other health and wellness concerns that a family wants to go online, that is available to them. They can contact Carrie Clark if they wanted to do that. We do not require masks. We do have some families and students that are still utilizing masks, and that's fine. That's no problem at all. And that we're just following, if someone is sick, they stay home for the 5 days, and then if they're feeling better and symptom-free, they can come back into the classroom. So that's pretty much what it talks about there. And then just the only other thing is that, I don't want to say business as usual, but we're still being mindful about having hand sanitizer available, making sure that kids are washing their hands. And so we just updated this so that we were current. And we're required to do that because of the federal ESSER funds that we have already spent, but it is a requirement. So that's why we got it forward. We ask for your approval tonight.
Love a 2-page return to learn plan.
Yeah, right.
There were some that were a lot longer than that. I have no questions. It makes all the sense in the world. We have a motion to approve. Motion. We have a second.
Seconded.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Gail, we got a financial summary?
Yeah, there's not been a lot of financial information, but, so I don't, unless you have any questions, I'm just gonna, the information's in the packet, and I will entertain you with more information next month. I'll bring back to you, the fiscal year 22 ending items, and then we will already finish the first quarter of fiscal year 23. So there's just not a lot happening right now in July or August. So unless anybody has any questions, I'll just let you review it. It's in the packet.
I do not have any questions. Alex, do you have any questions on the financials?
No, sir.
Josh, anything from you? All right, Gail, we will look forward to next month. Consent agenda. We've got a couple minor changes on the consent agenda I want to talk about first. One is, instead of Carrie Clark as the affirmative action coordinator, Vic Vanderpool, is that correct? That's what I have on here.
Yep.
Same thing for the section 504 coordinator, it will not be Carrie Clark, it's Vic Vanderpool. And then the last item, again, Vic Vanderpool will take the place for the alternate Title IX coordinator. I just want to make notes of that before we discuss the consent agenda here. So again, the items C, D, and E in the agenda. Vic will take the Carrie's spot with his new HR role. Anything else need to be pulled or discussed in the consent agenda?
Lots of personnel items, so.
Yep. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passed. Calendar, next regular board meeting is October 10th. We also have a November 14th board meeting, which we will have a location change, sounds like. Which we will find out more on that. And then December 12th, is the annual meeting. And again, Christine's going to find some dates here to do a work session for the long-range planning here in the next few weeks. Other than that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
We have a second?
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.